الله أكبر الله أكبر.
La ilaha illallah is a very powerful statement. And what that statement is saying is that there is nothing worthy of being an ilah except Allah. In other words, there is nothing worthy of being an ilah except for God. What is an ilah? What is an ilah? An ilah, at the very root, is an object of adoration and worship and refuge. It's really essentially that place that you go to when you're at your lowest. It's what you put at the center of your existence. La ilaha illallah means that you acknowledge that it is only God who has that place, not anything else. Even your own family, even your own children, even your own spouse, even your own money. And when you put Allah in that proper place, then what happens is the rest of your relationships become healthy. We're not talking about a religion without compassion, without mercy, without love. This isn't a cold-hearted concept. This isn't about just be cold, you know? Be cold to the creation. Don't have attachments. Be cold. That's not what it means. It's the opposite. When you have the proper place for Allah in your heart, then all of the rest of your relationships actually transform to being healthy, going from being unhealthy to being healthy. Your relationship with your job becomes healthy. Your relationship with your spouse becomes healthy. Your relationship with your co-workers, your family, your money becomes healthy. And you become a person of compassion and mercy. Why? Because you're not a beggar of the creation anymore. When you spend your time begging from Allah, you become rich, right? Because you're begging from the one who is the most rich. Al-Ghani, he's self-sufficient. He doesn't need anyone. His kingdom doesn't diminish no matter how much he gives. As the hadith tells us, if every single individual were to come together, every human being from the beginning of time until the end of time were to come together and then ask Allah for something, and if Allah were to give every single one of them what they asked for, it would not diminish His kingdom any more than if you take a needle and put it in the ocean or in the sea, it diminishes the ocean. Allah is the most rich. So if you are a person who spends your nights and your days begging from the most rich, what does that make you? Makes you rich. And when a person is rich, are they generous or are they stingy? Are they kind or are they harsh? When a person is rich, then they can be generous. And that's how you become compassionate towards the creation. That's how you become merciful towards the creation. That's how you become generous towards the creation. That's how the Prophet ﷺ was what he was. He was mercy. He was the epitome of human mercy. He was the epitome of human compassion. Why? Because he was rich. He didn't beg from the creation, he begged from the king. And that's how he became rich inside. And that's how he became loving and compassionate and merciful. So don't let anyone tell you that talking about don't have attachments means that you're going to be cold-hearted. It doesn't mean that you're cold-hearted. It means the opposite. It means that you are generous. It means that because you're seeking from the right source, then you are already rich and you have so much to give. When you give from a place of richness, you don't need to be selfish. You don't need to demand. It's like, October 3rd, 2001, I did such and such for you. When are you going to pay me back for it? You know, keeping track of everything that you've done for people and waiting for them to pay you back, waiting for them to do something in return. You don't need to be like that because you're being filled by Allah. You're already rich and your source doesn't diminish. So you don't need to go to the beggar and beg. You give, and you don't need to be demanding, and you don't need to be weak, and you don't need to be in need of others who are also in need. You see, when you go to a poor part of town, you never see a beggar begging from another beggar. Do you? Does that happen? It's ridiculous, right? Beggars don't beg from other beggars. Why? Because a beggar knows that the beggar is just as in need as the other beggar. He's just as poor. Why would I beg from another beggar? I need to go to the one who's rich. You see my point? So whatever it is that we need, essentially we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it, because Allah is the source. Now, does that mean I can't go to people for help? Does that mean that because I am asking Allah and I make my dua and I beg from the source, that I can't go to people for help? For example, to, a therapist, a counselor, a doctor. And the answer, of course, is I can. These are something that Allah has created called asbab. Asbab meaning the means. These are means. Just like I take medicine when I'm sick, that's a means, and that's part of our deen, to use the means. It's part of our deen to go and seek help when I need help. That's okay. What is the problem then? The problem is when I depend on the means instead of just using it. It's when I'm depending on the medicine instead of on Allah. It's when I'm depending on the doctor instead of ash-shafi, the one who actually cures. It's when I'm depending on this person who's giving me advice or this person who's giving me counsel instead of on Allah. I just need to realize that Allah is the source and Allah is in control and everything else is in His hands, and they are means, asbab. That doesn't mean I can't use and involve myself in the asbab, but my dependence should be on Allah.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.